Okay, am I on? I'm on. Okay. Well, okay, before I start this live chat, I'm just gonna get some, so back to you guys in a sec. Oh, okay. Because I am too. Right. So, anyway, welcome to my first, my first streaming since God knows when. Today's topic is going to be a special one because it's getting a sequel this year. It's one of my favorite films of all time. And if you don't know what it is, then it's, of course, Enchanted. I don't know how long this streaming is going to last, so bear with me. This is going to be basically like what I thought about the movie, what the movie was about, will the sequel be as good as the original. So, I'm trying not to waffle too much with this, but anyway, I'm going to tell you guys what the film is about if you haven't known already. So the movie starts off in this animated world of Andalusia, and we see this girl called Giselle, voiced by Amy Adams, and she dreams of like her true love's kiss. Like she makes this statue of what her dream prince would look like, and which is like a foreshadowing of as to who it is in the climax of the film. And of course, there's this prince called Edward, voiced by James Marsden. He was in X-Men as Cyclops, and he's in 27 Dresses. His stepmother, of course, is Narissa, voiced by Susan Sarandon. Very unrecognizable Susan Sarandon, who wants the kingdom of Andalusia to herself. So she decides to disguise herself as an old hag on the day of Giselle's wedding because Giselle and Edward fell madly in love with one another as he heard her singing that song True Love's Kiss. And of course, like the old hag who is really Narissa in disguise is like, oh, are you wishing for something? Because she brings Giselle to this like fountain place. And Giselle's like, oh, yes, I am. And we both lived happily ever after. And of course, the old hag pushes Giselle right out of, like, right into the fountain. And the Queen psychic, voiced by that guy from Harry Potter, Timothy Spall, he's like, oh, my most adored queen, where have you taken her? And she's like, oh, to a place where there are no happy ever afters. And here's me going, okay, so which place is she going to end up in? And why did she mention it? Why did she say about, oh, a place where there's no happy endings? Turns out the place is New York City, Times Square, New York. She comes out of a manhole in Times Square, New York, as a real life woman in this big white dress, which weighed, I think it weighed 45 pounds, and it literally like Amy Adams said, I think in an interview one time, that it literally killed her hips because it was so wide. And of course, she's now playing herself. Now she's playing Giselle as a human, of course, and she's struggling. Like she's wondering where Prince Edward is. She's lost. She's scared. She doesn't know what's gonna happen. Then of course that same night, her tiara gets stolen, and she's like, says to the old man, "You are not a very nice old man." And then it cuts to Robert Phillip, played by Patrick Dempsey, who is a divorce lawyer. He's a single dad to a 6-year-old, played by Rachel Covey, who I have to say this is so adorable. She's like the cutest child ever. And he's planned to propose to his girlfriend of 5 years, Nancy Tremaine, which is a nod to Lady Tremaine from Cinderella. Now, before going any further, guys, this movie is full on references to past Disney movies. Mostly, it focuses more on Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, and Cinderella, and I think Sleeping Beauty. Yeah, Sleeping Beauty. So it's more or less those four movies it kind of pays homage to, compared to the other newer ones like Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, what other one? What other modern Disney movies? Pocahontas, and so on and so forth. Anyway, back to the movie. So, we also see our first cameo, Jodie Benson, who plays Sam, Patrick Dempsey's character's secretary. And when I saw her first, I had no idea she was the voice of Ariel. I was like, who is this lady? I have never heard of her before. And I went to Internet Movie Database, IMDb, to see, like, check out who it was. And I found out it was Georgia Benson. I was like, oh my god, it's Ariel from The Little Mermaid and Thumbelina. Say what? And she did a great job in this movie, by the way, as the secretary. So of course, like Robert picks up his daughter, who in the deleted scenes has gone to karate because she has his karate outfit on her. And of course, we get to see Giselle again, and she sees this like billboard, and she thinks that's the castle, like the entrance to the castle, and she climbs up a car, like the bonnet of a car, and goes up the what you call it, the ladder, in this big huge wedding gown. She's like, "Hello, is anyone home? Oh, hello, please open the door. It's very cool out here." And of course, Morgan is the one that spots her, and Robert is like, "Oh, she's just a mannequin." He's like, "Oh," she's like, "Oh, she's really there." And of course, Robert like comes to Giselle's rescue, and he catches her because she like accidentally she slips off the billboard, and he catches her in the nick of time. So yeah, of course, at first, Robert and Giselle are kind of like polar opposites to one another, which I get to later on. Like he's kind of like, he thinks that she's completely out of her mind because he's probably saying to himself, okay, this woman must have escaped a mental institution or something with this big wedding gown, and she's like all whimsical, and she's just big blue eyes, like whoo, and she does this thing with her hands non-stop, and he's there going, okay, this girl is totally in the cuckoo land. So of course, next day, Edward decides to go to New York to find Giselle and Pascal. Not Pascal, I'm thinking of Tango now. Pip, of course, comes as well, and he's also human now, Edward, because there's this like manhole in Times Square, New York. Now, it never kind of clarifies how this is connected, but it's literally like a dark room. Basically, it's like a dark room, and there's no staircase. There's no ladders. There's no water. There's nothing. It's just a pure black dark space. And I was like, okay, this is sort of like a metaphor of like depression or something like that. I don't know, but yeah, no, you get the gist. Sorry for all the rambling, by the way. Anyway, back to the film. So, of course, next day, Robert's house is a total mess because he decides to, for Giselle to stay in his place until her Prince Charming comes along and rescues her. And, of course, she gets these rats and these mice, no, rats mostly, and pigeons and cockroaches, and I'm like, they're going, Jesus Christ. If I was in that house, I would get a heart attack if I saw rats, because I hate rats, rodents particularly. I hate rodents; they just creep me out. Ugh. So anyway, of course, Morgan decides to kind of wake her dad up, and he's like gobsmacked by seeing all these cockroaches, all these pigeons, doves, you name it. And he's like going, get out, get out, get out. But to top it all off, he actually accidentally goes into the bathroom and he almost sees a naked Giselle in the bathroom. And who, of course, decides to show up unannounced by his girlfriend, Nancy, Idina Menzel, who I've never heard of. I never knew she was a singer until, Frozen came out. That's to tell you how new I am to who Idina Menzel was. And she, of course, is kind of jealous. She's kind of a bit pissed off because she sees her boyfriend with another woman, and she automatically assumes that he's having an affair with this beautiful red-haired woman. And of course, she goes off. Then it cuts to Nathaniel with Narissa. And of course, Nathaniel decides to go to New York as well. Also becomes human as well of himself. And yeah, you get the gist. So then, of course, Robert decides to bring Giselle to his workplace because I guess he didn't want to leave her by herself. And he, of course, meets the couple in the beginning of the movie, Phoebe and Ethan Banks. Banks, by the way, is a nod to Mary Poppins. Of course, I forgot to mention about them. They want a divorce because he was more into this baseball character called Hank Aaron, who has since passed away. He was like a baseball player, and he thought more of that card than his actual wife. Silly, I know, fighting over a stupid card. I thought they'd be fighting over him cheating on his wife or something. That would have made more sense. But since it's a kids movie with disguised as a rom com, they were like, nah, we're just gonna do something, put in something stupid. Of course, Giselle, of course, spots Phoebe Banks, and she admires her hair because her hair is really nice and curly. Before all that, I forgot to mention that Giselle makes this dress of Robert's curtains, and he freaks out and gets really pissed about it because, I mean, for starters, those curtains must have cost a fortune. It must have really cost a fortune for him. But hey, he's a lawyer, so he probably has like a ton of money anyway, so he's probably fine. Sorry for camera talks in fact, by the way. And yeah, of course, Giselle kind of like tells Robert that to win Nancy over, he can sing to her, dance with her. And he's like kind of like, oh, no way. But yeah, back to the thing I was gonna talk about. By the way, sorry for all this waffling. I love this movie, so sorry for me waffling. What else is there I can say about this movie? Oh God, where was I? Oh yes, about Giselle like admiring Phoebe's hair, and of course Robert, of course, tries to explain to Giselle in a nice way, in a nice positive way, that they're not together anymore, they're divorcing, and she of course cries, and some guy's like, oh, she's crying like we're on Oprah, and he's like, oh, so funny. And of course, Robert again gets really annoyed by Giselle. Like, he can't wait to get rid of her. So he kind of like gives her money outside of the building, and he says, look, I can't help you anymore. Here's money, and you can get transport and find your prince, whatever. And of course, they decide to part ways. But of course, he decides, do you know what? What am I doing? I might as well just help her out. And he continues to help her out anyway. And of course, the two of them go off for a walk in Central Park together, and he kind of talks to her about how well does she know Edward for, and she was like, oh, I met him for a day, and he's like, you met him for a day, and she's like, yes, and tomorrow will be 2 days, and he's like, you're joking. She goes, I'm not. You mean to tell me that you're getting married to someone in a day that you barely know? And she's like, yeah. And of course, like, she kind of like asks Robert like how long he knew Nancy for, and he told her like his side of it, and he kind of tries to explain to her that all relationships are kind of like a hit and miss, and marriages end in period. So he kind of sees things in a negative aspect. He sees marriage as a divorce. Like, he sees like happy couples kind of like going, they're not gonna last, because later on in the movie we discovered that Robert was, I believe he was married before, and his wife left him. I think now, before I go into it later on, but anyway, I'll talk about it later on. So anyway, Giselle decides to sing That's How You Know, which is the most catchy song in this movie. And of course, like, she's there singing, and he's there like going, saying, why the hell am I here? Why am I here in the first place? And then like you see him doing this later on, and he's enjoying it, and yeah. And then of course it cuts to like what you call him, Edward, going to this hotel or hostel. I think it's a hostel actually. Yeah, it's a hostel. And called the Grand Duke Hotel, which is a nod to Cinderella of the Grand Duke. So of course that night, Giselle and Robert decide to go out for dinner in this fancy Italian restaurant where they don't eat anything at all. The pizza's literally there, and they never even touched the pizza. And if I was them, I'd be there eating the pizza and talking at the same time and drinking at the same time. Some bubbly. But yeah, as I mentioned before about Robert, these negative aspects of love, it turns out that he was married, I believe, before, and his wife left. Like, all he said to Giselle was, Giselle said to him about, like, does Morgan miss her mother? And he's like, we don't talk about it. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. He's like, oh yeah, it's okay. I mean, I don't talk about Morgan to anyone. And she's like, oh, it's because I was sad. And he's like, not at first. And she's like, oh, you're in love. And he was like, yeah. that was a problem. And he goes on and talks about this, which always sticks to me. This quote, the quote I think is like, because love, the lovey dovey version you talk about is fantasy, and one day you wake up and you're in the real world. And then she's like, well, what made you wake up? And he's like, she left. Theory. Now, this is a theory that I have to say. I believe that Robert, like I said, was married to a woman, and he either A, saw her cheating on him with another man, it could have been his best friend, or else she probably had postnatal depression after having Morgan, and she like couldn't take anymore, and of course he got the rights for Morgan in the end, and of course that's why she up and left. So, and it ended badly, and that's why Robert was in this mental state of mind where he thinks all negative thoughts and not positive thoughts. And the more I think of it, I kind of relate to Robert Phillip in a way, because I have negative aspects as well in my life. When it comes to love, especially, because I'm always seeing love as this kind of like, oh, will I meet the wrong guy? Will it end horribly wrong? Will it end in divorce? Who's gonna have custody of my kids if I ever got married? But but yeah, I thought it was a very clever idea that Disney did that. Like, Disney kind of showed like what divorce is like and how love is like in our world, not in the fairy tale world. Like all those Disney movies, they all have happy ever afters, and in the real world it doesn't work out that way. And of course Nathaniel disguised himself again, because he disguised himself earlier on in the before that scene as this Italian waiter, and the disguise is ridiculous because he has this like black hair, shoe polish, and then he has like blonde hair at the back, and I was like, dude, you should have just like painted your whole hair, like dyed your whole hair. We didn't. And of course, Pip. Why do I keep saying Pascal? Anyway, Pip the chipmunk. He warns Giselle that Edward is here, and she's like, oh, Edward is here, and of course she thinks then that Pip has died because Nathaniel grabbed the pizza and he just flung it into the stove, and she's like, oh, Pip. But yeah, anyway, that night, Edward, of course, spots Giselle on TV, and he decides to go out and rescue her. And meanwhile, Giselle tells the story to Morgan about her version of Little Red Riding Hood. And of course, Robert sees a side, and you can tell by him that he's kind of to himself, wow, Giselle's actually very good with kids. And of course, meanwhile, Edward goes out and rescues Giselle, and he enters every building, and it's so funny because the first time he knocked on the door, you see the singing voice of Pocahontas, which I thought was very, very clever. Then he knocks on another door, and it's like a cat, and he he imitates the cat's hiss, and he goes, and then there's a dog barking, goes, oh, and then he knocks the final door, and it's actually a gay biker. Because how I knew he was gay was because the way he was acting, he was all kind of all into Edward, never just yeah. But yeah, that night anyway, Giselle has Robert's pajamas on her, while he has this robe with nothing on him, only a robe. And here's me going, oh my god, he's getting so sexy. What's gonna happen here with the tension? So Robert has saying to Giselle, look, that was a nice story I said to Morgan, and she's like, oh yeah, thanks, because she's reading the book that he gave Morgan about the greatest women in the world, because he doesn't believe in fairy tales, like I said. And of course, Robert keeps saying to Giselle, look at Edward, he's not coming at all for you. Seriously. Believe me, I know what love is like. He's not coming. She, of course, gets very thick with him, and then she starts, experiencing anger for the first time. And there's tension between the two of them. She kind of punches him, and she starts laughing. He's like, are you okay? And she's like, oh, I'm fine, I'm wonderful. And it's here that the characters kind of slowly kind of fall in love with one another, which I knew was going to happen anyway, because there's a plot twist later on in the movie, which I'll get to later on. And Robert is kind of feeling the same way as well. He's in his room, and he's covering up his things to say, oh my god, what have I done? Oh my god, I can't believe I'm doing infidelity. I'm being so unfaithful to Nancy. What's going to happen? She, if I told her that I'm falling in love with another woman, that I barely even know for a day or two. So of course, next day Giselle makes another dress out of Morgan's mat, and he's like smiling, and she like serves him breakfast and everything. He's like, "Oh, that's great." And of course, who comes along to interrupt their friendly breakfast together? Edward. So Edward, like, he's there, he's all whimsical, he's acting all animated, and Giselle's like, "Oh, I forgot I can sing actually." And she's kind of like getting more human because the more times she spent in the real world, the more human she got. So she's more like getting into the more mature side now, not the animated side that she used to be. So of course Giselle kind of says, "Oh, let's go on a date together." And he's like, "Okay." So they go on a date together. And of course, a very sad, heartbroken Robert and his dog kind of bid goodbye. But he's like, "Oh, don't say goodbye. We'll see each other again soon. It's not like forever." And she's like, "And never." And you can tell by his face, Robert's face, that he did not want Giselle to go at all because it reminded him back to the time where his ex-wife left him with Morgan, and he just thought of that and said, "Oh, she's just like my ex-wife. She's never going to see me again." And Morgan's like, "I'm sad," and she hugs her dad, and she's like, "Yeah, me too, sweetheart, me too. When I miss each other." So then Giselle's like later on, she's like in the Brooklyn Bridge, herself and Edward having a chat, and you can tell by Giselle that she doesn't have strong feelings for Edward anymore. She's kind of like just going like that. I have to say, "Oh God, I want to go back to Robert." So of course she decides, "Oh hey, let's go to this ball that's happening tonight. Do you want to go?" And he's like, "Oh okay." Then could go back to Andalusia, and she's like, "Yeah, I promise," even though she doesn't. Spoiler alert. So of course, who decides to come in? Oh yeah, back to Robert. So the couple in the beginning of the movie that was supposed to separate were like, "You know what? We're not separating after all. We worked things out and we're getting back together." And Robert's like, "You guys have problems," and Phoebe's like, "Everyone has problems. Do we sacrifice those who needs them?" No. And he's like, "Yeah." So then, of course, who decides to come? But Narissa herself, now a human as well. But before that, Giselle and Morgan, because she went back to Robert's apartment. How did she go back to Robert's apartment? I do not know because there was no key. I say there was a spare key near the fire extinguisher. There had to be because there was no way on earth she was able to just walk in the door, go into the room and go, "Hey," behind Morgan, go, "Hey." Giselle and Morgan decide to go shopping together because she steals her father's card. Now if my mom had a credit card and I was a kid and I took it, I guarantee she would slap me so much and go, "Do not use my card again. You are paying all that back." So the big ball arrives and we see Robert wearing a very familiar outfit, and it turns out that he is Giselle's dream prince. And because I knew that from day one, because he wore the exact same outfit and the exact same like expressions and all. But I'll talk about that in a second, in a few minutes. Giselle of course arrives to the ball. Robert is like looks at her as if to say, "Oh, you're here, thank God you're here," and he's all like infatuated with her, like he's so in love with her. And of course, the commentary guy is like, "Oh, hey, let's swap partners." And I'm like, so like Edward dances with Nancy, Robert dances with Giselle, and you can tell by the two characters that they are slowly falling for one another, which they do, by the way. And I think the most romantic part of the ballroom scene is the part where Robert sings to Giselle and dances with her, and then like you can see him smiling. He's like, he gives this impression first as if to say, "Giselle, you look so beautiful. Don't ever leave me again. Please don't go off, Edward. I love you." And Giselle's like, "Oh, but it's complicated, like due to the body language, the way they were kind of like acting like this, going, oh my God." So of course, Giselle and Robert, like they're enjoying themselves together. He sings to her, like I said, which is so romantic. Patrick Dempsey singing, oh God. And of course, Nancy decides to stop them dancing and goes, "Oh, mind if I cut in?" And Giselle, very heartbroken, is like, "Oh yeah, of course," because she forgot about her and Edward. So of course Edward is like, "Oh, are you okay?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm fine," even though she's heartbroken, like literally heartbroken, Giselle, because she knows that Robert is actually her true love. but she can't be with him because he's like in a relationship with another woman, and she's in a relationship with Edward because she slowly doesn't love him anymore like she used to. So of course, who decides to come up unannounced in as an old hag again with Narissa? And of course, Giselle is so bothered and so upset, she decides to eat the poison apple. She falls into a coma. Of course, Edward stops the old hag, who he discovers is Narissa, his stepmother. And of course, then like they had to try and kiss Giselle. So like Edward tries to kiss Giselle first, it doesn't work because he's not the true love. And you say to yourself, okay, so who's the true love then? So Robert decides to kiss Giselle. Why, the kiss works, and we found out that he was her true love the whole time. So then Narissa gets really, really bitter and decides to transform herself into a dragon, and she like takes Robert with her. And yeah, the CGI though on the dragon, I have to admit, is so bad. It's just so dated, the CGI with the dragon. It was, oh my god. And then Susan Sarandon was going on and on and on of what was going to happen, and oh, I'm going to take the guy, oh, happy afters, blah blah blah. And here's me going, shut the fuck up. So of course Giselle decides to save Robert. She grabs Edward's sword. How does she know about sorcery and sword, about like, how swords work? I don't know. She's awesome anyway. So of course she decides to rescue Robert, and who's like dangling on this like building, the Empire State Building, or is the Woolworth Building? I think it's the Woolworth Building. I always thought it was the Empire State Building, but I think it's the Woolworth Building in New York, Manhattan. And of course Giselle does save Robert's life, and the two of them fall like down the building together, and it's pouring rain, and she says to him, "Is this Javier's before off his stuff?" And he smiles at her and is like, "Oh, you're gonna catch me." And of course they finally kiss in private together. And then it cuts to the next scene where Nancy and Edward decide to go back to the cartoon world because she had like a thing for Edward, even though they barely even knew each other, only for like, I don't know, 20 minutes. But of course there was a deleted scene with Nancy that she wanted Giselle's life because she wanted to find the prince and go on this horse and live in this faraway fantasy castle. And of course she didn't get that, and she wanted that with Robert, but of course Robert didn't believe in love as much, but Edward did. So of course Nancy marries Edward, so which makes her Queen of Andalusia and him King of Andalusia. And then of course Giselle opens up her own boutique, which used to belong to Eden Mazel's character Nancy, and Robert is now wearing clothes that aren't business related. And in the end, Nathaniel writes a book about royal treatment or something. And then Pip does the same thing. He writes a book in his cartoon world. And then we see Giselle and Robert and Morgan, they're all playing Happy Family together, and they're having a ball, and the movie ends, and that's it. But yeah, the movie itself, like the original movie, is brilliant. I love the story, I love the animation, I love the music, I love the characters, I love the chemistry between Amy and Patrick. I thought they did a great job in the movie. If I have to be honest, it's probably the best Amy Adams and Patrick Dempsey film I've actually seen in their career, because these kind of movies fit Patrick Dempsey especially to a T, because he is a family man in real life. And Amy Adams, like, every scene she was in, she, like, stole the entire thing, no more than James Marsden as the hysterical Prince Edward, which I thought was hilarious, by the way. And, to my surprise, Idina Menzel kind of surprised me in this movie, because she doesn't sing at all in this movie, but I believe she's singing in the sequel, which I'll get to in a few minutes. But yeah, overall, I give the original one a 10 out of 10. I love it. It's also one of my favourite films. I think it still holds up after 15 years, and who knows what the sequel is going to be like. But I did do a video a while back though on sorry, I need a drink of water. I did do a video before about what I think is gonna happen in the film. And I have a funny feeling that it's going to be like that. I still believe it's going to be like WandaVision. But yeah, the new one is supposed to be about Giselle and Robert and Morgan, and Giselle and Robert are now married to each other, and they like move from New York to Monroeville, which is I think set in Ireland, in Kerry in Ireland. Yeah, it is. According to the director Adam Shankman, who directed The Pacifier, A Walk to Remember, and The Wedding Planner. And he was producer for Step Up as well, the producer for Hocus Pocus 2, which is coming out in September next month. September 30th. But yeah, it's revealed that the sequel for Disenchanted, which is the name of the film by the way, and it's coming out the 24th of November, the on the day of Tangled's 12th anniversary, by the way. And yeah, I mean, it's got Maya Rudolph, Jema Mays, who was in Glee, Yvette Nicole Brown, the guy from the the Proposal, Oscar Muniz, and that guy that played the genie in the Broadway version, James Monroe, Eagleheart, I believe. He's in it as well. I don't know who he's playing it, by the way. So yeah, all the original cast is coming back. We've got Amy Adams, Patrick Dempsey, James Marsden, Idina Menzel. The only cast members that aren't in the sequel is Timothy Spall, who's Nathaniel, Susan Sarandon, who's Narissa. She of course died in the first one, and Rachel Covey, who played Morgan in the original one. She's now replaced by Gabriella Baldacchino, who's like a new actress, by the way. Even though in her filmography she was actually in Annie 2014 with that guy, Jamie Foxx and Rose Byrne and Cameron Diaz. Didn't even see her in that movie, but maybe I did see her. But yeah, she's taken over as Morgan Phillip, who is now like a 16-year-old, I believe. Because in reality, she should have been like 20 something because she was 6 in the original one, and the movie's taking place 15 years later, and she's supposed to be 16. So I think that's what it said anyway. But according to the plot of the movie, like I said, it's about Giselle, Robert, and Morgan, and they're moved to a new place. Like I said there a minute ago, and of course there's this like evil woman played by Maya Rudolph who has plans for Giselle, and Giselle of course wishes that her life was a fairy tale again, so it backfires. And of course, I believe that all the people from Andalusia all come into the real world, and Giselle has to find a way to correct things, and before the clock strikes 12, or else they'd be all human forever, I guess. I believe, I don't know. So that's why I have in my head that's going to be like WandaVision, that show with Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany. And it was kind of like a homage to all those past 1950s, 1920s sitcoms. But yeah, do I think the sequel is going to be as good as the original? I don't think it is, because it got a test audience. Like there was a test screening for the movie, but it didn't do well, and of course they re-edited the certain scenes again. Well, the director, like I said, Adam Shankman, said to one of the users on Instagram, Ireland is still part of the film, so don't worry about that. But that's due reshoots in Buckinghamshire, I think, in England. And there was like a lot of leaked images of like Patrick Dempsey done up as this knight and Amy Adams wearing this like golden dress. And then there was another one in Enniskerry in the purple building that was done up in Enniskerry. I think it's like the Royal Slip or something. And she wore this like peacock dress, which was like something out of the Barbie Island Princess movie. And you've got Maya Rudolph looking like she could be related to Narissa. I think she is Narissa's long lost sister. I don't know, but I think she is. But yeah, overall, overall, I'm not expecting a masterpiece. I'm just hoping it's as good as the original, but won't destroy the original, if you know what I mean. Because the original one, like, let's just face it, is brilliant, like I said there earlier on in this video. But yeah, I am kind of skeptical about the sequel though, because I have been waiting for like 12 years, because they were in talks of the sequel for 12 years. So I think, in my honest opinion, I think the sequel should have taken place, like, should have been made in, I don't know, 2010 because the actors were younger at that time, and now the actors are older. And seeing them older, you kind of say to yourself, is this? Am I gonna buy Amy Adams as this animated princess again? And Patrick Dempsey being a cynical divorce lawyer, and you've got this new girl, and you don't even know whether she's gonna be as up there at Rachel Covey or not. And then you have like, but yeah, I read before that the sequel, sorry, is gonna get like more songs. There's a lot of dancing in it. Patrick said in an interview on like an interview, it wasn't like a visual interview, it was like a written interview, and he said to one of the interviewers, Patrick, that he is going to sing in it, and people have to trust him. Of course, I did a bit digging up on TikTok, and I discovered that he's actually a good singer. You know, he's a real triple threat guy. I think he's up there with Hugh Jackman, by the way. So yeah, Hugh Jackman, you better watch out because Patrick Dempsey's coming for you, dude. I'm just kidding. But is there anything else I can say before I wrap it up? I don't think so. But anyway, enough about me ranting about the film. I've been going on so far enough, like too long, far enough, too long. So are you excited for the sequel? Do you think it's going to be as good as the original, as bad as the original? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you stuck it out for nearly 40 minutes of me ranting about this movie, thanks for watching. And I will be doing more videos soon, please God. And keep the requests coming, keep the subscriptions. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, do subscribe. It means a lot to me and my channel. So till next time, take care and see you guys later.